I like to think of a leader as someone who is empowering and enabling other people to become leaders in their own right. And how you project yourself to the world is in large part as to how you see yourself. And that goes back to the personal insecurities. But there's still challenges, particularly when it comes to receiving inclusive healthcare. You still, as a gay or bisexual man, can't donate blood the same way that other people can. That beautiful diversity and the challenges that come with it often allows you to telegraph messages in ways that can help you achieve your objectives. I think a large reason why many fail is they don't do their homework and don't know what they're getting into. Product-led companies can work, but only if the founding team truly understands the problem, and often that comes from living the problem they're solving.
Welcome, I'm your host Stefano, and this is When Leaders Talk, a podcast about leadership and most importantly, about leaders. What I really love about this podcast is how we bring different perspectives and different people. And this episode is special. The guest is Justin Ayars. He is a serial entrepreneur, is a lawyer by training, and he's also an active leader and member of the LGBTQ community. As a matter of fact, the startup is working on right now is called EqualityMD, and it aims to bring equal healthcare to the people belonging to LGBTQ community. And you would be surprised of what's behind the reason, of this choice. This conversation is about taking charge of your life, do something, being proactive, especially when you belong, if you belong to a community who is considered a minority or is, discriminated in a way or another. It's not only that. Of course, we talk a lot about the startup world and what is the startup founders should do to improve their chances of success. This is a great conversation where really Justin opens up and shows his authentic self. So don't miss this episode because it's really full of insights and food for thought. Before I leave the floor to Justin, let me remind you to subscribe to this channel. It is important for us to grow and to have great people like Justin as guests in the podcast. Also, you can go on masteryourc.com if you're interested in coaching, especially if you are a startup founder and you want some help in be a better leader or understand better what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are as well. Also follow me on social media, especially LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. Well, with no further ado, Justin Ayars. So Justin, how would you define a good leader?
There are many definitions, but I like to think of a leader as someone who is empowering and enabling other people to become leaders in their own right.
Empowering. I like the word. What do you, let's go deep into the meaning of empowering. What does it mean for you?
A lot of people, well, I'd say we all, in some respect, to some degree, have personal insecurities. I often jokingly say that all of the world's problems can be solved if we can overcome our individual personal insecurities. And that's hard to do because, first of all, you have to first admit you have insecurities about XYZ. And then when you think about overcoming them, you have to dig deeper. And sometimes you might find that you lack certain skill sets, or whether that's EQ or IQ, or even the connections to be able to bring whatever leadership goals you have to light in the real world. But if you can address those in a meaningful, thoughtful, provocative way, you can actually achieve a lot more than you thought possible. But that requires constant diligence, constant continuing education, and admitting when you're wrong, failing fast, and iterating based on what you've experienced.
Well, if I'm reading well what you're saying, it's basically kind of leading with vulnerability, showing up what you know, what you don't know, and allowing other people working with you to make up for those gaps, if you want, in your character or knowledge or anything. That well, we are humans, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I always like to not be the smartest person in the room because I can then see what strengths others have and how I might be able to bring their knowledge, their lived experiences into play with mine and see how we might be able to help each other in building a mutually beneficial relationship.
So, what is the one vulnerability or the one thing you're struggling the most, and you're still working on it?
That's a big one. It's uh, as a kid, I was a very heavy kid. I call myself a former fat kid, and sometimes look in the mirror and still see that image, and being able to overcome the physical appearances, because too many of us judge others by how they look. Um, and that includes not just the physical appearance, but how you project yourself to the world. And how you project yourself to the world is in large part as to how you see yourself. And that goes back to the personal insecurities. So I think some of mine that I've been working to overcome and have done so well, but still need practice is being able to do certain things that I think that embody what the ability is to achieve any leadership objective you might have. And that it's leading with curiosity, having grit, being able to maintain some type of balance, whatever that means to you, but primarily listening actively and thinking critically and living your life deliberately. Those things sound simple, but it's really quite challenging, and it's a lifelong process.
And that's very interesting. Thank you for opening up. I'm curious about. You have a great experience actually as a leader. This is not the first startup you're
Yeah.
launching, and I'm sure, as we just saw, you've been working on yourself as a leader in many stages in your life. So, what is that you do? What kind of leadership development? I don't know, program training do you normally follow? How much you invest in growing as a leader?
Quite a bit, and that it it implies many things. Sometimes it's financial, but most often it's time, and the willingness of your spirit to be able to be that vulnerable so that you can improve upon things that you want to improve upon. I I jokingly say I've been building every company I've manifested into reality simply by showing up to everything possible, building and cultivating authentic relationships, and being my authentic self and giving first. And if you can show up, be yourself, give before asking, then you can find that down the road, the universe will give you exactly what you need. Maybe not when you want it, but when you need it.
That's thank you. And so I wanna linger a little bit on this authentic part of you, because I guess this dimension is very much reflected on what you do today. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Sure. Um, I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community, and it's what we're doing now with EqualityMD, which is a company I have. It's a LGBTQ healthcare and data analytics company, and it's connecting the underserved LGBTQ patient population with providers who've had cultural competency training to create safe spaces in which patients can be their authentic selves and receive the care they deserve. That means coming out to your provider as a part of this community in whatever shape that looks like for you as an individual. That was challenging for me at first because I was a healthcare defense attorney for a few years in DC before the Great Recession really took a turn for the service industry, which of course lawyers are a big part of that. And I had to go out and find a new job. I was out as gay in college. Um, Went back in the closet when I lived in England as a resident tutor and history teacher at a naval boarding school because I wasn't comfortable enough and didn't want to create any kind of angst amongst the colleagues, the leadership, the parents, etc., in terms of being able to teach history to kids. And then coming back to law school, I was not fully out because I went to a pretty conservative law school. And then in the practice of law, which is very conservative still to this day, at the firm where I worked, I was very much in the closet and heard jokes around the water cooler that were very homophobic. And even when my then boyfriend sent me flowers for my birthday, I said they were from my mother because I was afraid to even tell my secretary or my paralegals that I was gay. So that that was a challenge to overcome, but that was also a different time. That was between undergrad in 2003, graduating law school in '07, and working in a law firm through 2010. Those were different times. That was before marriage equality was legal. That was before a lot of opportunities for LGBTQ employees were protected in terms of federal protections, but it's still not a classification that is the federal government recognizes as a minority population, even though it represents about 30 million individuals in the United States. So the challenge for me had been being comfortable in my own skin, if you will, and being authentic. And my sexual orientation doesn't define me, never has, never will. It is one part of many aspects of my various identities. And recognizing that and recognizing the power of portraying that, not so much marching in the streets, because that's not my style, but being able to have conversations in a business context and casual friendship conversations and mention it. Certainly not dwell on it, but just let people know that that's who I am. That really is that especially early on, people saw that as a very vulnerable and brave thing to do. It's become more accepted in terms of the business community, but still, I've gone to investor meetings where I get in the room because I look the way I do. I'm whiter than paper. I identify as male. But then when I utter the letters LGBTQ, a lot of people still get very uncomfortable. And unfortunately, a lot of those people are the ones that write the checks. So it's understanding, as my godfather Liberace used to say, always know your audience. So it's understanding and embracing your vulnerabilities, whether it's an internal thing with your personal identity or a lack of skill sets, uh, but then using those as strengths in the right time, in the right place, and in the right manner. And that balancing act is very challenging, and you have to make it appear as if it's effortless, like a duck swimming on water, gliding along, but it's frantically paddling underneath.
That's a beautiful metaphor. I must say that it's hard for me to listen to your words. I would say that I belong probably to no minorities, other than now I'm a migrant in the U.S., but always been part, I guess. And I was born in a lucky part of the world and everything else. So my life was never complicated. And so I really, I'm sorry to hear, and I'm telling you from my heart, I'm sorry to hear all the struggle you went through to really show what you were. And as you mentioned, it's not like you are wearing anything different from anyone else. But some people is just because you are gay, just because you belong to this community or other community, they just keep distance. And that's something that I don't like. And that's why I'm very happy to have you here and talking about this. Do you think, if you don't mind, we stay a little bit on this topic. Do
Sure.
you think the new generations are more open compared to, I don't know, not millennials, well, millennials, boomers?
Yeah, I'm a late millennial. I often say there's a millennial divide at 1989 because if you take that year and add 18 years, that's when the iPhone came out in 2007, which obviously changed everything. Um, I do think that it's easier now for younger generations as each generation since Stonewall riots in 1969 has gotten progressively better. It's not ideal still. Some believe that with the passage of marriage equality at the federal level in 2015, the gay problem was solved. But there's still challenges, particularly when it comes to receiving inclusive healthcare, You still, as a gay or bisexual man, can't donate blood the same way that other people can. They're lifting some restrictions, but the fact there still are restrictions are just absurd, particularly when there are blood shortages. It's getting better, but it's still a challenge, and it depends on each individual where geographically they are, socioeconomically, what education, what experiences they've had, where they've traveled. I've always said the best education is a passport full of stamps, and how they see themselves in the world. Going back to the idea of overcoming and embracing personal insecurities and transforming those into strengths.
What I appreciate what you're saying is that you have taken action, you have been proactive, and you first of all, as you say, you're not defined from your sexual orientation. It's part of you are, but it's not 100% of you are, right?
Right.
But still, you do something to create more awareness and to help those who are in your situation. And I really commend that. I admire people like you. I admire you, Justin, for what
Thank you.
you're doing. I really do. I really do. I'm not just because you're in front of me right now. For some reason, I don't know. I appreciate people doing this kind of works, if you want. Taking their life, taking charge of their life. I don't, especially not letting others controlling, not letting others define who you are or influencing what you have to do or you can do or cannot do. Talking about this, is there any model, a role model that you have in your life that helped you being the person you are today, the leader that you are today?
Uh, the, I would say professionally, it would have to be Sandra Day O'Connor, first U.S. Supreme Court female justice. And I had the privilege of getting to help her write a speech as she was stepping off the bench when I was in law school at the U.S. Supreme Court, and got to go meet her in person, which was just amazing because I've always admired her very middle of the road approach to jurisprudence in America. And beyond that, professionally, personally, I'd have to say my uncle. Um, he's a gay man. He's been very successful in the arts management's business, and from a young age, he would introduce me to his network of friends from all over the world, and they were also gay or bisexual or straight and just allies, and they just loved each other for who they were. And even as a kid, I remember we growing up in McLean, Virginia, which is just a stone's throw from where you are in Northwest DC. We would have Christmas at my grandparents' house in McLean in early evening, late afternoon, and then we would have gay Christmas in DuPont Circle on 17th Street, 17th and Q, and it was just like normal, quote, normal Christmas, only there were mostly men there, and there was a tree, there was Christmas music, exchanging gifts, drinking wine, enjoying the season. How crazy is that? And it opened my eyes from an early age, even before I admitted to myself what I was or even knew what I was, that there are many different types of identities, and if you can understand who you are and know that while you might not be accepted everywhere, there are many places and there are many individuals and entities out there that will accept you for who you are if you are brave enough to put yourself out there. I think he was a huge influence and still is to this day.
That's nice. That's nice. And I can see, and you're absolutely right. It's sometimes everything is so simple. Is we create images and we are biased and we create monsters and we think, oh yeah, we do. I mean,
It's true.
that's how we separate us from the others.
Hmm.
We refuse to recognize that the others are like us. They might have a different skin color, they might have different origins, different religion, but they're
Hmm.
still exactly like us. And probably I am naive, but I do think that 99% of the people, they want peace, they want be happy, and they want other people to be happy. They are ready to help others. And that's why I think that, and this is a discussion I had actually in the last episode with Roger Brooks, showing, helping one person per day. It can be a small a small gesture, I'm sorry, a small thing. It makes a difference.
Yeah,
First of all, it will is inside of you. You know that you're helping someone. And second, you create a ripple effect. So, a butterfly effect, if you want, and you will have more people helping each other, and that's a beautiful view, if you want.
I think so too. It's kind of like the spirit of Christmas in a non-religious sense is often referred to as the season of giving. And if we take that message of the season of giving and apply that to our everyday lives, personally or professionally, we'll find that we get more than what we give. When I was teaching kids, mostly high school level kids, history, politics, and philosophy in England at that naval boarding school in the middle of nowhere, and living in a boarding house with 71 boys, I'm surprised I didn't kill them all, and I'm surprised they didn't kill me. I always say that I learned more from them than I ever could have taught them. And keeping that open mind is absolutely critical as you figure out who you are and how you can traverse this world as your authentic self. And it's a lifelong journey. Some are born into situations where it's easier. I believe I fall into that camp, but I was also empowered by family members and other members of the community to perhaps come out as my authentic self and be more comfortable in my own skin in ways that others don't. And that's where I see people like me, people who are others in the LGBTQ community in leadership positions, whether it be in healthcare and in business and even activism, just letting others know that there are many, many different roads to achieving what you want to have out of life. But that journey starts within, and it's a hard one because no one wants to admit that they're wrong, and but most of the time we are, and that's a beautiful thing because that's through failure is how we learn.
Self-awareness is always a starting point. Whatever you
Yes,
want to achieve, you need to understand who you are, what you want, how you can reach, what you need to work on if you want to reach a result. And because of course you might not have all the skills, all the competences, so you need to fill the gaps in a constructive way, and otherwise you're not going to reach whatever you wanna reach,
exactly.
whatever your destination is. That's beautifully said. And talking about this, do you think, is there anything wrong the LGBT community is doing, or they can do better to help everyone else? And I don't like the word help, but to be more accepted. And it's,
Mhm.
it's it's even absurd that we're talking about acceptance, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a big question, and there are many schools of thought on this, and the same is true for other underserved communities, be it racial disparities, ethnic minorities, religious minorities, even socioeconomic minorities. It, there's often infighting amongst different groups, and no group, even LGBTQ, is monolithic. It's far from it. LGBTQ in particular represents every other demographic on Earth, from racial minorities to military veterans, and acknowledging that beautiful diversity and the challenges that come with it often allows you to telegraph messages in ways that can help you achieve your objectives. However, there are others who have different views of how to get advance their community into society as more, as you say, accepted, and as silly as that word is. Uh, and sometimes it's others prefer to get get signs and march in the streets and protest or uh, do other things. And I think it takes everything. It's often I often equate it to a battle. Maybe that's because I used to teach history, but You need the foot soldiers, you need the cavalry, you need the archers, and you need the generals in the back in order to accomplish anything. So in terms of the LGBTQ community coming together in different, even though they have different objectives, they play different roles, and each role is important in the broader picture as to how we can advance equality in a more broad sense.
Well, thank you for this, and hopefully, people listening will take something, some food for thought, at least for
Yeah.
improving the message. Let's go back to the startup world and exploit a little bit your experience on that. As we mentioned, you have multiple experiences as founder.
Yeah.
What is the point of failure that you have observed in your experience or in others' experience? Where do you see people failing? And you see that's why actually many startups, like 90% of startup, they say they don't go over a couple of years of life.
Well, that's right. This now at EqualityMD is my fifth company in the past 15 years. And so I'm by definition a serial entrepreneur, I guess a glutton for punishment. But I think a large reason why many fail is they don't do their homework and don't know what they're getting into. And just like studying for a test in school, you have to put in the work to get the grade you want. And even then, there are external forces of which you have absolutely no control over that you have to anticipate. You have to anticipate the unknown, which sounds impossible. But if you continually show up to events to help better yourself, improve your skill sets, align yourself with other individuals and organizations and businesses that complement your own skill sets and that which you bring to the table, you can kind of predict what may happen. You may never be right, but you can have that sense of resilience because you've surrounded yourself with both personal knowledge and others who can support and buttress your efforts so that it's not you against the world. And I think a lot of people feel very disappointed and despondent when their initial attempts to go solve a problem, it doesn't achieve the result that they expect. And that's actually a good thing because you learn from that and you can change your messaging, change how you approach things, and maybe even take a step back and try to better yourself, whether that's taking a leadership development course, executive education, or just going somewhere outside the United States and seeing how others see America from their perspective, see you through their eyes, and that allows you to help with your own introspective journey. And if you can do that, you are more likely to succeed as you go about, round two, round three, round four. But that persistence, that grit, that resilience, it's not everybody has that capability, and that's okay. And if you fail at a startup, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means the idea you had didn't work at that time. And sometimes, like I used to own a restaurant in Richmond, and a lot of people said it was ahead of its time. What does that mean in business sense? It's not going to work because people aren't ready for what you're delivering them. So again, know your audience, and it's not just skill sets and personal convictions and resilience and grit, but it's also timing. And when all these external factors come in, the variables that you can't predict and have no control over, when they hit you and punch you in the gut, you have to be able to get back up and get back on the horse and try again. And if that's not for you, that's okay. Then you can go do something else.
And we go back to what we said earlier about self-awareness, right? You need
Yeah,
to be self-aware of who you are, what you want, and how you're dealing with things to really path your journey towards success. Otherwise, you're
absolutely.
gonna
Yes.
get lost in the many problems that a startup has because it's normal, right? I mean,
Yes.
what I've noticed, and I want to adapt to what you say, what I've noticed is that everyone is very much focused on creating a product, and that's okay. So the first problem is, oh, the product market fit, and that's priority one. And then of course it's finances because You need money. You need, if you have a team, you need to pay those people unless they have equity. And but still, surely you have expenses and so on and so forth. You still need to bring food on the table and so on. But at the end of the day, it's not just that. It's how you deal with those issues and how
Mhm.
you deal with your team and how you deal with the problem, how you deal when you hit the first wall. How do you recover from that? What is
You-
the system you have in place to get on your feet straight away and keep working to get better? And many times we discuss on this podcast how ego is the biggest problem for startup founders.
Yep,
They fall in love with the product and they forget about the problem.
very much so. And it's not utilizing lean methodologies, agile principles, and design thinking. And those concepts, those business startup concepts, or just business concepts in general, require you to have that human understanding as to what is really at the root of the problem. You might be seeing and trying to solve symptoms of a problem rather than addressing the root of the problem. And addressing the root of the problem takes time. It takes an immense customer discovery and empathizing with the person who is experiencing the problem rather than just trying to build a solution. Product-led companies can work, but only if the founding team truly understands the problem. And often that comes from living the problem they're solving. And at EqualityMD, our entire team has lived the problem we're solving of LGBTQ discrimination in healthcare. And that's why we bring that authentic lived experience to the table. And that resonates with a lot of not just customers, but also investors. And that's a very powerful thing. So when you hit that brick wall, sometimes you just need to take a beat. There are days where it's hard for me to get out of bed, even now, and that's okay. I found a friend who's I think late 20s, and his wife says that when sometimes he just has what she calls founder sickness days, where he just closes himself off to the world for 2 days and binges Netflix or whatever, and then gets back in the saddle and starts over again. We need to be able to be aware of what our egos are, because we all have them, and how we can address the imperfections and utilize those as strengths to be able to go back and go out and do it again. But it takes a lot of resilience, and it takes the ability to understand that you're going to get those gut punches and run into many brick walls before you break through. And even if you never do, you'll still be a better person for trying.
Oh yeah, you're gonna learn a lot, in the hard way. And the funny thing is that not all the lessons you're gonna learn need to be learned in a way that,
Exactly.
I mean, there are if you go out there, there are so many resources. It can be books, can be YouTube, can be a network, like talking to people like you who has a great experience, can be a coach, can be a mentor, can be any form. Now there you have apps that can actually help you, so there are actually ways to go to solve at least part of the problem. You're still gonna do mistakes, you're still gonna fail at some point, hopefully not 100%, but there are things you can prevent just observing, learning. And I like what you said earlier: traveling, learning, exploring different perspective. And that's so beautiful. That's the great way to open our mind, right?
Oh,
To really
absolutely.
understand what's out there.
And if you do that, you can start to see connections across various verticals that others might not see. And that's a very powerful thing to have the ability to do, because then you're able to better anticipate what challenges might come. You might be in the tech sector building, I don't know, another app for whatever, and you don't really care what's going on in the Middle East or what the Federal Reserve is doing, but you have to consider those macro macroeconomic and geopolitical issues that are happening in real time in different parts of the world. They might not affect you in your little area that you're working on, but you need to be able to place times and events and things going on in relation to what you're doing. It might not relate, but it may. And that's why I always enjoyed learning, is because you can, if you don't, if you study history, for example, and just talk about battles and kings or generals, you're missing all of the other beautiful things that humanity has to offer, like art, literature, and how we approach diplomacy in other nations. And when you bring them together, you see a bigger story. And being able to see that bigger picture is what great founders and great leaders are able to do, is a multidisciplinary approach to leadership. And that comes through education. Doesn't have to be formal education, but just self-improvement, and going out into the world and seeing how others live their lives.
That's beautiful. And actually, what you say is, it reminds me of the book I love the most. It's the one book I always recommend. It's not about leadership, and now that I think about it, it is also about leadership. It's a novel. It's called Blindness by Saramago. He was a Portuguese writer, Nobel Prize winner, and this book is about, I don't want to spoil it, but it's about basically people becoming blind on, with no almost no symptoms. So a whole
Mm.
city, a whole country, everyone becomes blind, but someone. And it's a story about leadership, because actually it's interesting to see how the society reorganized in a way, itself, not in a good way, unfortunately. But the book is great. So it's really one book that I love. And thank you for mentioning that. Talking about this, what is the tool that you're using, the book that you have read that has inspired you, the most, or the one that you would recommend?
Ah, there's a book I read years ago that really helped me understand sort of a different way of thinking when it comes to startup land, and that's the lean startup. And there's a lean canvas, and it really digs down into asking why this, and then going like five whys, why, to get to the heart of something. And being able to, instead of writing a 50-page business plan, which is terribly antiquated, being able to put on a single sheet of paper what you believe to be true, and then going out and testing it in different sprints to see if what you're doing is right. And then if it's not, iterate and change. And you might find that the problem you're trying to solve isn't actually a problem. And that can be a blow to your ego, because you thought you had the next billion-dollar idea, billion-dollar product. But if it's not solving a real problem, what's the point? And so many founders make that mistake of trying to build before they actually do the homework, and mapping it out. Again, not a big business plan, but just really thinking it through and talking to other people who have different lived experiences, who are in the world that you're trying to sell your product to, is absolutely critical. And that goes back to another thing, is the power of relationships. Getting out into the world, outside of your desk, off of your screen, and communicating with people in real person, because then you can see, not just hear from their words and their voice and their intonations, but their body language, their expressiveness, how they move their eyes, and how they interact with others in a crowded room. What what they're doing and how they can bring value to what you're doing, either in some type of mutually beneficial relationship, or you can learn from them. But you have to be willing to learn.
One of the things I love about talking to leaders is the different perspective they bring. And actually, one of the CEO founders I interviewed in a previous episode, he said, "Oh, if you wanna have a successful business startup, you need to have a business plan." You actually say, "Well, don't." I'm not gonna say what's better, what's worse. It's I think is a very much it's a different approach. But what I can say is that I have a startup. We're following the lean the lean startup
Hmm.
method. It's if we were gonna experiment.
Well,
It's a way. I mean,
there's nothing wrong with a business plan. I think that that can come later. It's more a business plan. I view as more of a long form version of the lean canvas because the lean canvas is the starting point. And once you do the customer discovery, do the homework, do the research, talk to people, go out into the world to networking events, to different places where you can learn more about what's going on in the world you're trying to build something for. You can then add more depth to the questions asked on the lean canvas, and that can turn into a 10, 20 business page document. So I think that there's nothing wrong with a business plan, but I wouldn't start with that.
no, but actually, it goes back to what you said earlier, and this is for all the startup founders. Get ready for whatever you're doing. You might have the best idea in the world,
Mhm.
but creating a business is not just having the idea, it's
No,
also having a plan that can be the lean canvas or writing business plan or whatever you want, and achieve your goal. And starting with self-awareness and everything we said earlier. I don't want to repeat.
yeah,
It's gonna take long. So thank you for at least we're circling back. You know
yeah.
that's always good to kind of wrapping up and talking about wrapping up. We're almost at the end of our time. So I want to ask you, what are the suggestions that you will give to people coming to you? You know, since you have, as you say, you are a serial entrepreneur, and they ask you for some good recommendation to be great leaders and to be successful in whatever they do. What is that you will tell them?
Show up to everything possible, whether it's virtual, ideally in person. See what others are doing. See if you can find common threads and string them together to amplify whatever it is that you're doing or augment, be it with another platform or another person, the skill sets and talents that you bring to the table. Always be curious, lead with curiosity, and never stop learning. When asked a question, be present, listen. Don't think of the answer to the question when someone else is talking. Really, frankly, give a damn about what they're saying because they're taking time speaking to you. You should honor that by listening actively and then think critically. Don't take things at face value. Ask the question why. See what other ways, what other implications any idea might have on something else that may or may not relate to you, but that can add value to you as a person and you as a leader, and then live deliberately. And that's a quote from Henry David Thoreau, and that's really thinking about it's bringing all of it together. Every action you take should ideally be deliberate, and not accidental, because you've done the homework, you have a better understanding of the problem, and you have an idea as to how to execute it. But even if it doesn't go your way initially, you're nimble enough in your thinking and your mindset personally, your soul, if you will, that you can make changes at the speed of life so that you can get done what you want to and still have fun enjoying the process.
I like what you're saying, and there was especially the listening part that is so hard for us, and we always thinking about, oh, how stupid is the thing that he just said, or what is the next question I should ask. And that's why I have learned to pause every time to wait for the person to finish saying whatever they're saying. And I'm probably a little bit slower, so I need a moment to reflect on what you just said and then ask the follow-up question. And I've learned to accept that part. Some people are
Mm.
scared by silence,
Yeah,
but silence is as important as the words.
it's powerful. If I may, there as a trial attorney, there are three lessons I learned that I apply to startup life as well as my life in general. One, if the opposing counsel makes an argument that is spot on, defer to them. Say, yes, my opposing counsel is absolutely right about X. It shows respect and grace and humility. When the judge asks you something and you don't know the answer to it, don't lie. Don't make something up. Say, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I don't know the answer, but I can get that for you tomorrow. Not knowing something and admitting that out loud to somebody else is very empowering. The other thing is silence. If you're silent, take a pause for 5, 10 seconds. The next words you speak, everyone will be waiting for those words so you can make those words count. And I think that silence is very important. So that also allows you to listen actively. And finally, just I'd like to say that I've been filling out applications because I'd like to show up to everything ad nauseum for over 20 years now. And they always just ask the same questions, different formats and different character counts. And that's so annoying. But one day I stopped saying, oh, I did this, I won this award. And I closed my eyes and just started typing. And the words that came out were, I have the mind of a philosopher, the heart of a poet, and the spirit of a starship captain. In all that I do, curiosity remains my true North Star. And I've been using that for, gosh, about 5 years now. And when people hear that, it resonates in ways I never thought possible. But that really describes who I am. It's in philosopher is about that critical thinking. The heart of a poet is about listening actively and empathizing with others. And the spirit of a starship captain, besides me being a Star Trek nerd, is the idea of making bold decisions, not being afraid to fail. And all of those are wrapped around the idea of looking up and saying, what if, by having that curiosity at the heart of everything you do.
That's beautiful, Justin. It's a great wrap up for this conversation. There are a lot of things I'm bringing with me, but first of all, I guess, is the example that you give not just to the LGBTQ community, but to anyone who belongs to what is called minority community. And just to remind them that we have the power to show up, as you said, and do something not violent, possibly,
Right.
to also because violence is not going to solve anything most of the times, and to actually do things better and allow the others to see us as human beings like everyone
Exactly.
else. So thank you for this great conversation. It has been a pleasure having you with us, and I really hope we'll have the opportunity to meet in person.
I would very much like that. Thank you for this opportunity. It's fun to have these types of conversations because it's life's an ever evolving journey, and I continue to be a student of life as much as I was when I was back in high school, and I love it.